Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We have a special episode talking just about Penn State. So if you are a Penn State fan, you're going to love this episode. We have had a commenter, a chatter, as you might call, in our chat a number of times, the Penn State guy, Chris, as he's known in his real life. And Chris decided he wanted to come on here and just share a little bit about Penn State. Felt like he had some information about the NIL over at Penn State that I thought was going to be interesting for you all to know. And then we'll talk about season expectations, kind of some of the way stuff is going in spring practice. Zach will also do an episode, kind of deep dive with one of his experts on Penn State. But we also wanted to get this video out here just for you, one of our Big Ten Huddle listeners, to be able to enjoy and just discover a little bit more about Penn State. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it. I don't know if I ever asked you this. How long you been a Penn State fan? What's your history of fandom as a Penn State fan?
My whole life. The funny thing is I didn't go to Penn State, but it's just embedded in my whole family. Like, I'm 48 years old, and I could say, from the mid 80s on, I've been a Penn State fan pretty much my whole life. My dad grew up in this small town, and my dad's like 82 years old now, and he played on this good basketball team. It was in Luzerne High. And his center, the guy that was the center on the team, got a scholarship to Penn State, and he ended up staying down there, marrying the coach's daughter. His name was Ronnie Avillion. And I guess that's how my dad became a big fan, and now here we are.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, let's start with the NIL here, Chris. You said you went to an NIL event not too long ago. You're somebody that's plugged in with the NIL. Just kind of give us an overview. What's the situation with the Penn State NIL? Are things good, things bad? You're more just kind of your perspective as a fan and what you know a little bit more than maybe the average Penn State fan might know.
So the way their NIL is decent, it's not, Oregon or Texas level or anything like that. But I think the unique thing with their NIL is how they use it. They use their NIL for retention more than anything. So for example, like if you're a top target, a recruiting target, they'll get if they want you, they get aggressive with NIL. Okay. They're not going to give you something crazy like Oregon will, because what happens is you see things not pan out. You give all these kids all this money that are kind of unproven. Look at Nico Almavala, or how do you say his name? Yeah. But what they do is they use it for retention. And I can tell you for a fact, like once you go there, you prove your worth, and they see you're a good fit, you'll make good money at Penn State. Like I said, it's not Texas or Oregon level, but you could make good money. Like, I was told straight up, Drew Allar's making 7 figures. A lot of their top guys, I think, are probably making 7 figures. And if you think about it, since NIL started, how many top players has Penn State really ever lost to the portal? Like top players that were good players. Not many. None, really. Well, one, I would say. And that's because they take care of their players when they're there. Like I said, you might not get like a $600,000-$700,000 deal right at the gate, but you'll make that once you're there. I think every couple of months I turned around, Nick Singleton had an NIL deal. I could tell you Katron Allen he played as a freshman, and from his freshman season on, he had schools every year hammering him, probably tampering, I'm sure, to try to get him to come to transfer, offering him big NIL deals. He stayed. I heard from a reliable source that Abdul Carter was getting $50,000 a month. Now, think of a guy like Abdul Carter. He's one of the top, him and Travis Hunter, the top players in this upcoming draft. Could you imagine the tampering and the NIL deals he was getting from other schools to transfer? But he stayed there. And I spoke to Abdul Carter just one-on-one at another NIL event a few years ago that he was at with some other players. And I said, you must have got some pretty big offers. And he just shook his head like, oh, man, you wouldn't believe it. He goes, well, Penn State took care of me. They did me right. So like I said, they won't outspend everybody, but they want to make sure they get a return on their investment, and they're going to take care of you once you're there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting, kind of discovering every single program and the approach they take with NIL. I think, a program like Oregon kind of gets a bad rap sometimes because people say, "Oh, they're just going to pay everybody." And it's like, well, it's just a different approach that other schools might take
Yeah,
and might not take and it's there's nothing against the rules with it,
no,
but the way I say is better in my opinion with how the house settlement is coming in is an approach to NIL that Penn State is taking, and Ohio State gets kind of lumped in with the Oregons a little bit, but I think they're
right,
actually probably more similar to the Penn State based off what I know. I think that's probably a better way of doing it with this house settlement. I think Oregon and Texas and those kind of schools doing it the way they're doing it is better in the current landscape, but the
right.
landscape changes, things happen, and teams will adjust. We'll see how Oregon and those teams adjust, but I think Penn State, based off what you're saying, is set up well for the future of college football if this house settlement goes through and does end up changing
Yeah,
NIL the way we
they
think it
have
will.
a good stable program. The thing with the house settlement is, will it be able to be enforced? I mean, anytime, supposedly there's already lawsuits lining up and stuff, like, what do you call it, that the lot or the low, whatever, that outside agency that are coming in to govern it. Like, anything over $600 has to be reported, and it has to be fair market value. It's not supposed to be paid for play. So if there's an agreement where you give a kid a $200,000 NIL deal and he has to do X, Y, Z and show up to sign autographs so many times or whatever, they want to make sure that's met. What sets the market value for that? And the thing is, like, how are they going to enforce it? Every time they get crushed in court, every time you turn around. So I hope there's some controls. I'm not against NIL. My thing I always said is, I just wish there's a level playing field. There's got to be a level playing field. But the way the laws are set up, it's just hard. You can't put a salary cap because it's endorsements. So it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I think they'll figure it out. The more I read into the house settlement, the more and more research they're doing into pro athletes and everything else, and I think they're gonna get it figured out. And the biggest thing is they're never restricting an NIL deal from happening. All they're saying is if you want to do that NIL deal, that player is ineligible to play, and that's a huge factor that I don't think everybody thinks about. Is there the NCAA, this power conference group that is doing this is not saying you can't make that much NIL money. They're
Right.
saying that you can make that much NIL money, but you're not going to be eligible to play. It's the same thing the NFL would do if Jerry Jones decided to pay Dak
Yeah.
Prescott an extra $3 million. They'd say, no, you can't
Could
do
they
that because you have a
are they
cap.
gonna, yeah, well, yeah, like I said, could they enforce that? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, it's just, we'll just see if they could enforce it. I hope they
For
could.
sure.
And the
For
the
sure.
interesting thing you say about how schools like Auburn and some of these other schools will just throw a ton of money at them is, like, when do they get a return on their investment? The interesting thing about, I'm on the message board. Some of them love me, some of them hate me, because these sunshine pumpers, I battle with them. But, like, I posed a question. I said, would you rather be a team like Penn State, a good stable program that wins double digits pretty much consistently every year, or would you rather be a 500 program, like a powerhouse type program, but a 500 program like a Miami and Auburn that has all this NIL money? Like, going forward, what would be better long term? And Auburn still hasn't figured it out. All the money they play, Texas A&M, they got a ton of money. They still struggle. So the stability is there at Penn State, and the development is there. They're a developmental school, so they're doing it the right way. Um, See what happens in the future. You know,
Yeah, we will. We will. All right, shifting gears, let's move on to a little bit of season expectations, and we'll end with some spring practice talk and see if we can verify these season expectations based on the spring practice and the way things are going there. So, Chris, obviously, Penn State is coming into this season getting compared to Michigan from 2 years ago with how they brought everybody back, Ohio State last year with how they brought everybody back. I would say the biggest difference between this Penn State team and this Ohio State team that just won the national championship is I don't see Penn State going out and getting a huge transfer portal addition like a Caleb Downs,
right?
like a Will Howard that Penn State does, but I don't know if this Penn State team necessarily needs that. I think this is one of the strongest coaching staffs in the country. I think that James Franklin still has some things to prove, not just nationally, but there's a
Yeah,
number of
I
Penn
agree.
State fans who think that as well. And I think that he dispelled a lot of issues based on last year being able to get to the Final Four and being able to give Notre Dame as good of a game that they were. The way that game ended was obviously heartbreaking. However, I think there is opportunity here for Penn State to possibly meet their goals and get to a national championship and obviously win it. Is that your expectation yourself as a fan? You're saying national championship or bust, or are you just like, let's beat some teams in the college football playoffs? Where are your expectations at for the season?
Well, my expectations is absolutely make the playoffs and make a deep run. Like they should at minimal make national championship or bust. I think they have as good a chance as anybody. But as far as realistic expectations, make the playoffs and make a deep run like you did last year. I mean that's where I'm at with it. But as far as like the team, so here the whole season, in my opinion, comes down to two things: Drew Allar's improvement and the defense. So here's the thing, and I have a question for you. I keep hearing so much, even before Jim Knowles came to Penn State, that it takes a year for him, like it takes a good year for the defense to his players to grasp his defense and just go 100% full bore. Is that true? Is he going to dial? Is he dialing it back some? You know what I mean? What's your take on Jim Knowles as far as the learning curve year one?
Yeah, I saw Jim Knowles for the past 2 or 3 years at Ohio State and was impressed with what he was able to do. Ohio State was a terrible defense, and then he came in and right away he got that defense fixed against lower tier teams. But there was obviously some issues. You look at that Georgia game, you look at that Michigan game, there were issues with big
Yeah,
plays that still were happening, and the fans were obviously upset. But he was switching over everything on that defense schematically. The thing that I
right,
think is a difference here with Penn State, and I've said this to Zach on the podcast before, is Penn State already is operating with a similar schematic system of a 4-2-5 to what Jim Knowles operates with. I do think there are some varieties to what Jim Knowles brings to the table, but I also thought Ohio State was a really good situation for Jim Knowles to try and get him outside of his 4-2-5 with a jack position type of player and move on to being a true four down lineman team and
right.
doing that. So I'm going to be curious how Jim Knowles operates this season with the roster that he has, saying, okay, I don't necessarily have to, play defense the same way I was doing at Oklahoma State. I can adjust and still have a really good defense and play things the right way. Now I'm a bit of an anomaly. Most Ohio State fans hate Jim Knowles for some reason. I don't. He brought a
Because
national
he
championship.
left them,
Yeah, I mean, he brought a national championship to Ohio
yeah,
State, and then he
yeah,
went home to Pennsylvania. How can you be mad with the guy? Like
yeah.
whatever. I don't. I guess
No,
it's
I
a
get it,
conference
but that's just
rival, but
typical fan stuff. It's
yeah. But the way I look at it is I thought Ohio State was actually really good for Jim Knowles because he had to adjust his defense to what Ohio State had. He talked a lot in the beginning about how he didn't have to be as gimmicky as he was at Oklahoma State because he came
right.
in with the best players. And so while yes, that was true, I think 3 years ago when he first said it coming into Ohio State, I think he's learned, I think he's grown, and I think there's opportunity here for the defense to be just as good, if not better, than they were last year. But obviously, we're going to have to see,
With
how does Jim Knowles
Patricia,
operate with that?
yeah. So here's the thing. As far as with Knowles in the system, how you're talking about the adjustment, I know with Penn State when Franklin brings in a new defensive coordinator, same thing with Manny, same thing with Tom Allen. He and Jim Knowles just said this in his press conference. They kind of blend the new guys system with what they already have in place, especially like the verbiage and the signals and the call, like stuff like that. They try to keep what they do well and just their base core of what they do well defensively. And again, mainly the verbiage. And then Jim Knowles adjusts to that and then it's his defense, but they keep some of what works well. So hopefully it's not too bad. Like I did find it interesting, the story Zach Smith said the first time they played Oregon, that Jim Knowles' play sheet was just way too for the game was just way too, his call sheet was way too big. And you could see the adjustments. You guys crushed him in the Rose Bowl. So I'm just hoping that he learned not to give him too much year one, and that, just let him play, because you want your defense to play fast. Now, what's interesting is, to me, this is like Penn State went from Manny Diaz, who was the most aggressive defensive coordinator I've ever seen. He was great. I mean, I love bringing pressure, to Tom Allen, who was kind of a middle of the road, brought some pressure, but not quite like Manny Diaz, to where Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles last year, Ohio State blitzed fourth least in the Big Ten. From what I read, that they're blitzed the fourth least. So it's definitely going to be a little bit different. I know in practice the DB's been balling out, winning a lot of one-on-one reps. I know his DBs, but like he coaches the DBs to be really aggressive and stuff. So we'll see. But the other concern on defense, I don't think it's concern, just got to see what happens, is they lost their two starting defensive tackles. Their best defensive tackle is back in Zane Durant. Alonzo Ford, who was really coming on last year, he's recovering from a pretty serious injury. I don't know what the injury is, because Franklin never discloses that stuff, but it was pretty serious injury. He's not back yet. Hopefully he'll be back for September. But after Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford, they got to rely on some young guys that were true freshmen last year. Guys like Xavier Gilliam, Ty Blanding, and some names like that you'll hear. And linebacker, Kobe King is a big loss. They got, again, some not younger guy. Well, it depends. Keon Wiley's a guy that was hurt last year that would have played quite a bit probably in the linebacker rotation. He's probably the leader to get the middle linebacker job. But Kobe King, so you just got to see what they do up the middle. Not the greatest depth, at least it doesn't seem right now, at D tackle, like a new middle linebacker. So just, see what they can do. But
yeah, linebackers are going to be interesting to me. Talk a little bit about the offense, the wide receivers. I know you have a strong opinion on the wide receivers, and you did show some good tape out there. While I don't want to say that the wide receivers are completely blameless, I do think you have a good point to the wide receivers probably get more criticism than maybe they deserve.
So here's the thing with this. That's true. These wide receivers Penn State had the past few years, even going back to Keandre Lambert-Smith, Trey Wallace, Amari Evans. I'm not saying these guys are all Americans or they're not Chris Godwins or Jahan Dodsons, but they are a lot better than what people give them credit for. The problem was that even back to when Mike Yurcik was here, too much of the scheme is built around the tight ends, because Penn State has such great tight ends. And Franklin has always said whoever the number 3 receiver is always going to be in a battle with the number 2 tight end. So is it going to be 12 personnel or 11 personnel? And they have such great tight ends. I'll give you a name right now you're going to hear a lot. Luke Reynolds, the whole recruit. I mean, started off as a 3-star and played quarterback in high school. He eventually became a 5-star. Every camp he was at, everything, he lit it up. I've heard nothing but this guy's an absolute stud. So Luke Reynolds, and they're going to build, that's the thing. But with the receivers, the scheme, too much tight end centric. Not too much, but you play to your strengths. So a guy like Tyler Warren, I understand going to your tight end a lot. But the thing is, when you're not involving your receivers and going to them as much and going to them downfield, you're limiting what your offense could do. Play to your strengths, but there was a stat put out, something crazy about RPOs to wide receivers, where Penn State went to their wide receivers way below the average of what other teams did. So, and the other thing is with Drew Allar, I watch a ton of film. I can't always get all 22 film. I get what I could sometimes. A place called Caddy's Cut-Ups does get some good film. And every game I have watched, in games that I've been at, and I'm watching what's going on downfield, there's 3-4 times a game wide receivers are getting open. wide open, and Drew just has this hesitation. You're at home watching the game on TV. I don't mean you, I just mean people in general.
Right.
The camera's where the ball is. So if you see Drew back there like this, looking, and then he checks down, everybody assumes the wide receivers were always covered. And it wasn't always the case. Like, can you imagine 3-4 passes for another 100 yards or so a game for Drew Allar? Like, that's what he's just so conservative. Like, I thought your show about the game manager type thing, I think that was spot on. I think the kid has all the talent in the world. His arm talent is huge. You saw he did at Oregon, slinging it all over against USC. That's the Drew Allar we all want. That's the Drew Allar we need. But then he just gets so conservative. And like Keandre Lambert-Smith, now the way he had a little bit of a falling out at Penn State. He didn't leave on the best terms, but he's a good receiver, okay? He went to Auburn, who threw the ball downfield and had 981 yards with Auburn and Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne's not better than Drew Allar. They're just more willing to chuck the ball downfield. And you're going to see the same thing. I guarantee you, Trey Wallace, if he stays healthy at Ole Miss with the way Lane Kiffin develops quarterbacks and throws the ball, you're going to see Trey Wallace put up good numbers. You have Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Wallace were both 6'1", around 185, they're 6'1", 185, 190. Lambert-Smith ran a 4.38 in the combine. Trey Wallace is probably a low 4.4 guy. Amari Evans is a 6-foot speed, not a great route runner, but a speedster, faster than either of them, supposedly like a mid 4.3 guy. So the talent was there. It was just the scheme in Drew's hesitancy. He'll see a guy open, and it's just like that slight pause, and then it's too late, check down. And I showed the footage to you, and you've seen it. I mean, some of these guys were really open. And again, I'm not trying to say put it all on Drew. I'm not trying to say the wide receivers are all Americans or anything like that. But you remember the 2023 Michigan team, right? The national championship team. What I'm saying is Penn State receivers, I think at minimum, could have done something along that level. Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson. They're better than what people give them credit for. But unless Drew just wants to sling the rock until he makes up his mind, to get the ball downfield and take more shots when he has an opening in a window, and the offense makes more of a conceded effort to have a downfield passing attack, I don't think you're going to see a big difference. I think they're still going to be a good team, but how much of a difference is it going to be? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you were saying. I only saw the 3 clips that you posted, but I also went back to Zach Smith's coach's film room of Minutes to Sports. We advertise it here on the show regularly. If you want to go catch all 22 film with a former college football coach telling you basically what's happening, go over there and check it out. It's valuable. And Zach does a lot of the top games in the Big Ten as well, mostly Ohio State, but other games as well. But I went back and watched some of his Penn State film. He did about 2 or 3 games last year of them, and I actually saw a lot of what you were talking about. And to me, it looked like Drew Allar maybe didn't possess, maybe he doesn't possess it, but maybe he doesn't have the willingness to throw guys open. That's a trait that I saw in JJ McCarthy that was interesting in that 2023 season that you're pointing to. And now I'm reflecting back on that. He was able to throw guys open in some of those games. Now in the TCU game, it didn't work out so well because TCU disguised some things and did some things differently, but he was able to do that later on in the game once he figured it out. You look back at 2023, what he was able to do against Ohio State, Alabama, he was able to throw guys open. That seems to be a skill to me.
McCarthy's a great quarterback.
He is a great quarterback. He first round pick, top 10 pick. Like he
absolutely
deserved it. So as far as I'm concerned, that's probably where Drew Allar needs to step up his game, is trusting his arm, throwing the guys open a little bit more. And people have to remember, like, Drew Allar started his sophomore year. He's still developing as a quarterback. It's not like he's some 25-year-old super senior 7th year in college or something like that. He's still got to develop, and it's valuable that he's had the time, but like, this is the payoff year, right? This is the year, the 3rd year in the system when you put it together.
And I'm not trying to put it all on Drew and hammer the kid. He's a great kid. I met him. And for the record, from year one as a starter to year two, there was significant improvement in his game.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you saw the improvement. So hopefully he takes that next jump. Now, as far as what you're saying, throwing guys open, he 100% has the ability. Like his arm's huge. He has
Oh, he has great
tremendous
arm.
arm
Yeah.
talent. But you hit the key word on the head, willingness. He has to have the willingness. Like I'm not one of these guys. There's some Penn State fans you hear, oh, they should have played Boo Pro Bowl. Or Boo's, listen, I think he's going to be a heck of a quarterback at Missouri. I'm not one of these guys that said he should have started over Drew. But just for a reference, like Boo Pro came in, had to play the whole second half versus Wisconsin. As soon as he saw a guy open, there's no hesitation. The ball's out. And Drew is just like, he's just so conservative. There was 2 years ago, they're going into a game against like Massachusetts. And before the game, leading up to the game, one of the announcers said, this is what I talked to Drew about. I said, what are the main things you want to improve upon in this game or work on? And he mentioned one or two things, but then he stressed, he said, and no matter what, absolutely no matter what, do not put the ball in harm's way. Do not turn it over. And it's just burned into his head so much to just not take those chances. And okay, don't take a chance, but man, when you got a window and you got a guy open, you can't hesitate because in the NFL, those windows close a lot quicker than they do in college.
Yeah, you got to play fast and you got to play free. And I remember back the 2023 Ohio State game against Michigan, there was a story told about how, and this guy gets way too much crap. I'm not somebody who gives him crap. I think Ohio State did a good job by moving on from him because I think Will Howard was better. But Kyle McCord in that game, there was a story that he got into the middle of the team and said, no mistakes out there. And it's like, you see why you would say that, but sometimes you want guys to play free enough and to play aggressively enough that you don't so much care about the mistake because you trust the athleticism and you trust the player. And based off your stuff that you're saying, I wonder if maybe that's where Drew Allar is at a little bit. Is he putting too much pressure on himself? Is he maybe not playing as free? Is he not trusting his arm to just say, I see that guy, I'm going to hit that guy and make it happen? So let's go ahead and move on to for sure. Let's move on to spring practice stuff. And if you have anything else on Drew Allar, talk about it here in the spring practice stuff. Is what you're kind of hearing about spring practice encouraging as a fan toward these season expectations? Do you think it sounds like Drew Allar is making some of the improvements he needs to make? What are the receivers looking like in spring practice? What are you hearing? What are your thoughts here, Chris?
So, I mean, they don't give you a lot, let a lot out of the bag. I think it's going to be a similar offense to last year. Obviously, Nicky's back. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of like he likes to use a lot of multiple sets and diversions. I think you're going to see more 12 personnel, 2 running back sets. As far as the receivers, like I said, Ross is looking good. I don't think Ross is this super fast burner to the level other people think. He's not a Tez Johnson, but supposedly he's looking good. He's really good after the catch. Tyser Denmark, and I'm not saying Tyser Denmark's going to be a Jahan Dotson or anything, but I think Tyser Denmark, my opinion, and Devontae Ross are probably the 2 most talented on the team. The limited practices that they'll post on YouTube or wherever you get to see with the one-on-ones, Tyser Denmark looks really good. Kyron Hudson's doing his thing. The thing with Kyron Hudson, he just doesn't have much speed. He's not that fast. He's another big receiver. I'm sure he's probably better than what Fleming or Liam Clifford maybe gave him last year. But he's just a possession guy. I just think it's going to be – I don't mean this negatively because they almost went to the national championship, but I just think unless Drew makes the turn, I don't think it's going to be much different than next year. They're going to pound the rock with the 2, great running backs they got. They're going to focus on the tight ends because I'm telling you, this Luke Reynolds is a stud. And, I don't know how much of an upgrade Ross and Hudson is to Wallace and Evans. I really don't. I think a slight upgrade, maybe. Now you throw in Denmark, it's an upgrade. But I just think it's going to be a lot of the same offense. Pound the rock, get the ball to the tight ends a lot, and sprinkle in the wide receivers here and there. But as far as I'm going, I mean, pretty much status quo. They got a true freshman receiver, Kobe Howard, that's looking really good too. I don't anticipate him playing a ton this year, but he's looking really good. But I will say that from everything you're hearing, the DBs are winning more one-on-ones in practices. Like the defense, even though it's a new system, is actually maybe a little ahead of the offense. But it's only spring stuff, and it's probably watered down. You only get to see so much.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for the defense to be ahead of
Yeah,
the
it's
offense in spring.
not.
It's a little bit simpler to start with, and you kind of see where it goes from there. So, all right, well, let's go to the defense really fast, and then we'll wrap things up here. Linebackers, big question there. I just had a linebacker enter into the portal. I saw
Yeah,
you talking about that on
yeah.
last night's show. DB's looking good, so I think we've established that. Obviously losing Abdul Carter. Maybe talk about the linebackers a little bit, the loss of Abdul Carter, and if anybody can step up and maybe not
So
fill that
Carter,
role, but help fill it.
right? Yeah. Guy I would look to replace Abdul Carter. I'm huge on this guy. Max, the two of them. They're both freshmen last year. Max Granville and Jalen Harvey. Max Granville, he was from Oklahoma. It's shocked that we got him from Oklahoma, but this kid is a stud. I'm not saying he's an Abdul Carter, but his burst and the number, like, because I do film review for Rivals, the number one thing I always look at first that either just jumps out to you or not is, do they have that quick explosive burst off the ball? And he has it. I'm not saying he's an Abdul Carter, but he could very easily be the level of at least the Chop Robinson. And this guy is a stud. Now, he had to get better versus the run. He did flash last year a little bit. They ended up redshirting him. He played in his 4 games. He had to bulk up. Last year he was playing he was only like in the 225, 230 range. He's up to 250 pounds now. But he got an explosive get off. He has pass rush moves. He's very, very physical. Jalen Harvey is the same way, not quite as explosive with the get off, but he's naturally even bigger. He almost looks like a 3-tech D tackle. Jalen Harvey's like 6'2", 6'3", about 260. Really good physical, strong, quick burst get off. So the guy I would look to is Max Granville. I don't think Max Granville is going to start. And obviously, deny Dennis Sutton's there. I mean, he's a veteran we all know about. I'm just trying to say some new names to watch out for.
Sure.
Zariah Fisher, it was supposed to play a lot last year. He was injured, missed the year. Great kid, met him too. Zariah Fisher, deny Dennis Sutton are probably both going to start right now. Zariah Fisher's a good, solid player. All-American, not quite that, but maybe a second, third team type. Zariah Fisher's good, but he was a former linebacker, converted to defensive end. But the guys I'm excited to see are Max Granville, Jalen Harvey. You want to go to linebackers now? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So linebackers, obviously Tony Rojas is going to start. Dom DeLuca is an interesting story. You remember Dom DeLuca? I assume he was a walk-on, and he was from my area. And just
I'm really high on Dom DeLuca. I really like his game, and I think he has a lot of stuff that he can bring to the table and be a good piece for this Penn State
So
team.
here's an interesting story. I live in northeastern PA, and he played high school football just a couple towns away to school we used to play. Wyoming area is the name of the school. Went to the state championship. He tore his ACL in the first half of the state championship, and they were losing by 2 touchdowns, something like 21-7. I just know they're down 2 touchdowns. Dom DeLuca played the entire second half on a torn ACL, brought his team back and won a state championship. It's funny because him and Tony Rojas are like exact opposites. DeLuca is just not the best athlete, not a horrible athlete, but he's not like a big time. He wasn't even a much of a recruit. He's a walk on. Great instincts. He has great, and that's so important. You could have the best athletes in the world, but at linebacker, you got to be able to diagnose plays, shoot the right gaps, take the right angles. And Dom DeLuca knows how. He just has it. His instincts are incredible. Tony Rojas is a great athlete. He came in, he's fast as hell. He's like a 4.5 guy, but he just struggled with instincts. Like you would see him running around blocks a lot instead of taking blocks head on. You would see him take bad angles. So I'm hoping he's improved and he got a little better diagnosing plays and just better instincts, taking better angles. Behind them two, Keon Wiley, I mentioned him earlier. He was injured last year, was supposed to start, or excuse me, not start, but would have been in the rotation to some degree. Good athlete, 6'2", 230 range. Good athlete, could move well. Supposedly, from what I was told today, he's surging up. Another guy I really, really like, Anthony Specca. Anthony Specca was a true freshman last year, I believe. So they're the four names: Rojas, DeLuca, Keon Wiley, Anthony Specca.
Who was the one that entered in the transfer portal? And are you guys
Tamir
concerned about that?
Robinson. And see, I was surprised. I was very big on Tamir Robinson. To me, Tamir Robinson, he was a bigger guy, 6'3", probably close to like around 230, and you could see it. And he wasn't super fast, but he was a pretty good athlete, like probably faster than Kobe King. And he reminded me of, like, he looked like the guy that was going to be that big thumper, the next guy to come in. I didn't realize that the guys, not Rojas and DeLuca, but apparently Keon Wiley and Anthony Specca, they were ahead of him on the depth chart. He's going into year 3. Apparently he wants to be a D end as well. So, he's going into year 3 with no guarantee to start or get a ton of playing time. So, I kind of don't blame him wanting to go somewhere he's going to play. Not as big of a loss as I thought at first, because these other guys are ahead of him.
All right, good stuff. Chris, really appreciate you coming on. There's a lot of really good information, and I think other fans of the Big Ten are going to benefit from hearing deep dive of some names and also hearing about the improvement of some other players. Is there any last things you want to get to before we get out of here?
No, not right. Really, I think we hit on everything. Just trying to give you guys some names to listen to. Tyser Denmark at receiver, Max Granville, Jalen Harvey at D end. That's it. Wiley at linebacker. Other than that, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different from last year. Just hopefully better results in the end. We go all the way.
Very good. We appreciate it, Chris. You mentioned that you do some film review stuff for Rivals. Is there anything out there you want people to check out? Social media handles, anything like that?
Well, I mean, just join up for Rivals. Like, go to Happy Valley Insider, rivals.com. I mean, they're always trying to, get as many people as they could to join. I mean, it's, I don't have a link or anything. It's just, you just go to Happy Valley Insider on Rivals.
People, if you're a sports fan, you know how to get to Penn State Rivals, Happy Valley.
Yeah.
So. All right, Chris, we really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
Thank you so much for watching, listening. If you're on podcast, you can catch me and Jeff on Thursday night doing an NFL draft primer. If you're listening to this after that, you can also catch us on draft night. Me and Jeff will be talking all things draft, doing a live show during that, bringing on special guests the entire time as well. And then, as always, you can find me and Zach on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. and Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. We will not have an episode on Easter, though. Going to take a break for that one, so you can catch me.
You guys put a lot of content out,
Tuesday.
Man.
We try our best, man. And
no, you do. You put a lot. You got a really good show, man. It's cool interacting with other fans and seeing their perspectives. You guys got a really good show.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it, man. So check out the Big Ten Huddle basketball as well. That one's more of just kind of my solo project, just because I don't have a right-hand man like a Zach out there to talk basketball with. But it's a good time over there. Go check it out. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And
you got it, man. Take care. Anytime. Let me know.
Will do. See ya.
All right. Adios.